Welcome back data nerds in Power BI Data Cleaning Part 2. I know it's been a while since I took the part 1 session of data cleaning, so I'll just give you a quick recap about what we learned in part 1 and what kind of data cleaning we did in the part 1 video. So we learned about promoting the rows in headers if you do not have perfect headers, first of all. Then we learned how to deal with trimming spaces if you have extra spaces here and there. Then we also learned how to deal with capitalization error, means you have same names written in different ways, then how you are going to deal with that. We also learned how to check correct data type and how to decide that which is the right data type for which column. And we also learned how to change the data type into the right ones. Then we also saw how to delete the empty rows, how to deal with empty columns, and these kinds of aspects of data cleaning we learned. I saved the best for the last, which is understanding null versus blank versus unknown. So I see a lot of students are confused when it comes to these concepts, and they tend to treat these three things in a very similar way, but that's not right. Having said that, there's no strict rules to deal with these things. It totally depends upon what kind of data you are dealing with, what kind of columns do you have, and how important that column is when you create the report. Is that column playing any decisive role when you are analyzing the data, when you are representing that data or report to your stakeholders? So how will you deal with nulls and blanks and unknown depends upon these factors. So we should not be blindly deleting things. We should understand that where these things are present and how these things should be taken care of. And that's what we are going to learn in today's video, column by column. I'll show you how if a blank is present in a text kind of column and if a blank is present in a numeric kind of column, how do we deal with them differently depending upon the need, okay? There's no hard and fast rule. It totally depends upon what kind of columns you are dealing with. Null is present in what kind of column, blank is there in what kind of column, and how you're trying to present that data to your stakeholders. So these are the factors that you should be taking decision on. So with that note, let's get started. So even before I start cleaning something, I want to make one thing very clear. What is blank versus null versus unknown? Let's understand this concept. So blank is nothing but a missing information. Okay, blank is nothing but a missing information. Means whenever you were collecting data, it was missed while collecting the data. Maybe a human error during the data entry, or maybe your system could not capture the data. Either way, it was our fault in collecting the data. It shows the data was present, but somehow we could not capture it. So that is what blank is. Then comes null. Now null shows that customer never shared the data with you. Maybe there was a form where customer was supposed to fill what item did he or she buy, but you see there's a null. And you also see there's a transaction ID there, which means that is for sure that there was a transaction happened, but your customer never shared what item one bought. That is the difference between blank or null. So blank is what? It's a missing information. There was a data, but somehow your machine, your system could not capture it. In null, you never got the data. So there's no point in breaking your head that what was the data there. You never got the data. If you see null, which means that customer never shared the data with you. You never had the data in the first place. That's what null means. Then comes the third part, which is unknown. Now, what is unknown? Unknown is a valid label which says that we don't know what that data is. We're not sure. So suppose you see you have a transaction ID and then you have an item. In transaction ID, there's an ID mentioned. But when it comes to item, the item says unknown, which means that transaction happened, but somehow the item was not captured, that what item was bought. It might be a cookie, it might be an ice cream, it might be a tea, but we're not sure what item was bought. So we are not sure of it. That's what unknown says. The first rule, you are not going to deal with them in a similar way because these three things are very different and you have to keep that in mind. Having said that, there are no strict rules about dealing with these things. You have to pay attention to what kind of data you are dealing with and what kind of columns do you have which has these three things. If you have a text column which has blank or error or null, then you are going to deal with it in a different way. But if you have a numeric column which has error or which has null, which has unknown, then your way of dealing with that column should be different. Again, depending upon how much important that column is. Are you going to use that column in your KPI? Are you going to create a slicer with that column? These kinds of factors decide that what will be your way of dealing with these three things. So now we have understood a basic difference between blank, null and unknown. Let's get started how to deal with that. So we had a cafe sales data. We had transaction ID, then we had item, and then we have quantity, and we have these columns. Okay. Now let's start with the transaction ID. I want to start with the very first column. I want to check, is there any anomaly present in my data? Okay. So I'll just click on this drop down and I'll check. So do I see any kind of error or null or unknown? I don't. So okay, so it looks like transaction ID column is clean, so we don't need to do anything. Now if you remember, in our last video we cleaned transaction ID as well. We had some duplicates, so we cleaned that, we removed duplicates. So I think transaction ID had only that much of problems and we have already dealt with that, so no need to worry about transaction ID. Okay, we're done with transaction ID. Let's move towards item. Okay, again I'm going to check clicking on this drop down, which shows that I have a blank, then I have an error, and then I have unknown. So I have all these three factors which might affect my data. Okay, so how am I going to deal with that? Let's understand. What I'm very scared of is error. Error is a very dangerous thing in your data set. You should not have errors in your data set. Why? It might break the refresh, it might break the calculations. It is going to create a lot of problems if you do not remove errors from your data set. Okay, so first thing which I'm going to deal with is error. I do not want any error in my data set. Now I have 2-3 ways to deal with this error. One, either I can just filter out all the errors and I can delete the rows. Second, I can replace this error with the unknown. Okay. Third, I can just right click and remove errors. Now these 3 things you can do depending upon the data sets and depending upon your requirement from that column. In my case, I do not want to remove these errors, but I want to replace them with the unknown. So I will just select the column, right click, and I would see replace values. I would click on replace values, a dialog box would open, and then value to find. So it asks, what are you trying to find? I'm trying to find error. And what do you want to replace with? I want to replace with unknown. Click OK. It will take a couple of seconds and all the errors will be replaced with unknown. You remember there was an error here. Now what is it? It's unknown. So if I just click on this drop down, you would not see the error text which you were seeing earlier, right? So all the errors have been replaced to unknown. Fine. That was one way. Then I see blank. Do I want blank in my data? I don't want blank. Let's understand this 8th row where we have blank in item. So it shows that you have a transaction ID, means there was a transaction done, but the item, what was the item bought, that is missed, means transaction has happened, that is for sure. So what we can do, we can just replace this blank with unknown, telling that there was a transaction which has happened, but we're not sure what was the item sold. So that's why it's safe to replace blank with unknown in my case, because it's making sense. Hence, I would just again select the column, right click, replace values. It would ask value to find. What are we trying to find? We are trying to find blank space. And what are we trying to replace with? We are trying to replace with unknown. Click OK. And then you would see this blank will be gone. This will be replaced with unknown. Yep. And if I click on this drop down now, I would just have the item names and one extra which is unknown. That's it. The blanks are gone, the errors are gone. Now in my case, it was safer to replace blanks and errors with unknown. It's not possible in all the cases, okay? So you have to make those judgments. We have dealt with this item column, and pay attention as we move ahead with these steps. Those steps are being recorded here. So we have replaced nulls and we have replaced blanks. So those 2 steps have been recorded here. So before I actually deal with quantity column, I want to show you one thing. Remember, quantity is not a text column, it's a numeric column. If you remember, in my first session, we have changed the data type of quantity from text to whole number, because quantity can be a whole number, right? You see this 1, 2, 3 symbol? If you click on that, it shows that whole number has a symbol of 1, 2, 3, which means the quantity column is of whole number, right? And that's how it makes sense. As per this symbol, it shows us that the quantity is converted into whole number. But the question is it actually converted? Let's check that. just click on this drop down and try to filter out the null values. You are getting this error. Now, it says that we could not convert to number. Why it's happening? There's an important concept to understand. You changed the data type of quantity, which was a numeric column, and you changed it to from text to whole number, right? But your column already had some text values, right? Like error or something like that. And when you are converting that text column into number, it did not convert all the numbers, right? Because there were few texts present. That's why it's a suggestion, whenever you are dealing with a numeric column, first clean the column completely. First check that do I have any text in this column? If not, then only you should convert the data type into numeric or whole number or whatever. Otherwise, you will face these kinds of problems. Remember, even though this is showing whole number symbol, still even one error is found in this column, Power Query will not be able to convert the whole column into a whole number. Okay, so first you have to deal with this error, you have to remove this error, then only you'll be able to convert this whole column into a whole number. Okay, so what I'm going to do, in numeric column, you should never have any error, not at all. All the calculations that you're going to perform, that will be on numeric columns, right? And if you have errors there, it is going to break all your calculations. Okay, so I'm just going to right click on this column and I'm going to click on remove errors. Okay, yep. So now you see the one step has added here which says removed errors. After removing error, now when you filter quantity column, you can see the nulls are coming. Before, when you had error in this column and you were trying to filter the nulls, you were getting an error. That error you are not getting now. Okay, so now we have to deal with these nulls. So these many nulls you have in quantity columns. Now let's think. We have nulls in quantity column. We have respective transaction ID present, which means the transaction has happened for sure. These items were sold, that also we know. Now you have two ways. Either you replace these nulls with 0 or you remove these rows only. My question is, if I replace these null with 0, what's going to happen? Isn't it going to mislead the stakeholders? If I replace all these nulls with 0, the number of quantities sold will be a misleading data. If in future I'm going to create a KPI card which will show total number of quantities sold, right? And if I have these many fake zeros added, then don't you think that number is not right? That number is somewhere misleading for stakeholders? Resultantly, I should not replace nulls with zeros, because in my case, quantity is playing a very important role when I will create the report, right? And if I just show these many zeros in my whole data, don't you think it's not fair on the business side? Somewhere I'm misrepresenting the data, correct? Somewhere I'm showing the wrong zeros, which is not even there. What if 2 juices were bought? What if 8 coffees were bought? And here I am sitting and replacing all the nulls with zeros. That's not fair on the business side, right? So that's why I would not replace these nulls with 0. I will uncheck the nulls and click on OK. So now whatever rows you had nulls, those rows will not be considered in my analysis in my Power BI reporting. Now you see, if you click here again, nulls are unchecked. Now comes price per unit. Okay, let's scroll a little bit down and we see error, we see null. Fine. So first of all, what are we going to deal with? We're going to deal with error, because this is going to break your calculations. This is going to prevent you from filtering. This is going to break a lot of things. I'll just select the column, right click, and just going to click on this remove errors. Yep, you do not have any errors now. The errors we have dealt with, you have null. You have to pay attention when you have numeric columns. First you have quantity, then you have price per unit, and then you have total spent. Don't you think if we multiply quantity by price per unit, we can get total spent? Means if we do total spent divided by price per unit, we'll get quantity. Similarly, if we do total spent divided by quantity, we can get price per unit, right? In price per unit, you see null, but you have quantity value and you have total spent. Don't you think you can divide total spend by quantity and get the price per unit, right? So that's why I was telling you to make the subjective judgment depending upon what kind of columns do you have. Here in my column, I know I have null, so I can calculate that. Here I see that I have one null in price per unit. I have null in total spent as well. So these kinds of columns we cannot do anything with, because we just have one data and we cannot do any kind of calculations. So ultimately we have to remove these kinds of nulls. But before removing nulls, I would wait and would try to calculate these kinds of null values, so we'll have maximum values and we don't have to remove the values, because data cleaning is not data deleting. That is not the right practice to clean the data. You just start deleting everything, you start unchecking everything. That's not how you clean the data. You find a way, how can I get that data? If not possible, then you actually delete the data. Removing, deleting, unchecking actually impacts the business decisions, okay? I'm not going to do any kind of calculation right now. I'm just showing you the decision making that we need to do during data cleaning. Okay. So now let's go to total spend. First step, you have to check for errors, and if you have errors, remove errors. So the errors are removed. Again, let's check for null. You will have nulls, I guess. Yes, you have nulls. You have null in total spent, but you have the respective values in quantity and price per unit. Don't you think if you multiply quantity by price per unit, you can get the total spent, right? So that's why I'm not going to uncheck the nulls. Now let's move on to the payment method. Just click on this drop down and you see we have blank, we have error, and we have unknown. Okay, so first thing that we're going to deal with is error, because one thing I know for sure, this transaction has happened because we have transaction ID. We just somehow could not capture what was the payment method, right? So let's not remove these rows, but let's replace this error with unknown, which will tell that we know that payment was done because of some technical glitch or human error during data entry. We could not capture that what was that payment method. So I'm not going to remove these rows, but I'm going to replace the values with unknown. So we have replace values here. So I'll just finding error and I'm replacing it with unknown. So now when you click on drop down, you'll notice you don't see error because all errors were replaced with unknown, right? Now you have done that. Now I again see few blanks. Again the same logic. The transaction has happened, means the payment has been done, but we're not sure what was the payment method. So let's not remove these rows. Let's replace these all blanks with unknown, which will tell the transaction has happened. There was a payment method used. We're not sure what was that payment method. So I'll just select this, right click, and then replace values. What are we looking for? We're looking for blank. What are we trying to replace it with? We're trying to replace with unknown. Yes. So now all the blanks are replaced with unknown, which shows that now if you click on this drop down, it says that we have cash payment method, credit card, digital wallet, and apart from these three, we have something called unknown. So we're not sure what payment methods were used. Now, when you actually show this to your stakeholders or your business or your leadership team, it will help them understand that there's some problem in data collection process, that somewhere we are not able to collect the data very cleanliness. This actually helps them improve the quality of data collection. We'll move forward towards location. Okay. Now location again, click on this and see you have same thing, blank, error, unknown. I'm going to repeat the same logic and I'm going to repeat the same steps as well. Okay, so I'll right click and I would like to replace errors with unknown. With unknown. So you see, you will not see the error here. Okay, now we have blank. I'm going to do the same logic with blank as well. Just going to replace this. Yes, so now error and blank both are replaced, and now you have location, in store, takeaway, and then you have unknown. So you're not sure what location it was. So now we have dealt with location as well. Now comes transaction date. Again, this is very important. In transaction date, you cannot have any kind of error. It's as important as your numerical column and your transaction ID column. You cannot afford to have any kind of errors here. But I see errors here. So what I'm going to do, select this column, right click, remove errors. So now all the errors are gone. I'll just click here and we'll check that do we have any error. Okay. We don't have any error, that is for sure, but we see we have nulls. In text column, we replaced these nulls with unknown, right? In numerical columns, we thought that we'll calculate and we'll try to find out what these null values are. But in transaction date, in date kind of column, you can never guess. You can never replace the null values. You do not want to take any chance in guessing the transaction date. So it's always better to uncheck null and remove these rows from your data. If you are taking this step in your office, in your business, then keep your leadership informed that you have removed these kinds of things. So keep a copy of raw data so you can share with them and you can show what kind of problems you were having in data. That's why you had to remove few things. Okay. Yes. So now we have unchecked the null and we only have legit dates in our data set. So I think we are good to go here. We have checked transaction ID, we have checked items, quantity, price per unit and total spent. We still see few nulls, but we have decided that we'll calculate it, and at the end if we still see nulls, then we'll remove these kinds of nulls. Okay, but that will do after the calculation. Whatever leftover values we have where we just see nulls and it's not possible to calculate, there only we'll remove the nulls. Before we'll not remove. We'll try to calculate as much as possible and we'll try to retain the data as much as possible. Okay, because as I said, data cleaning does not mean data deleting. Now once you are done with the data cleaning, okay, just click here. You see this under home, you see this close and apply button, just click there. And yes, the data is loaded and you have all the data present now. So we have cleaned the data. We loaded the data, we cleaned the data. Now comes the visualization part. From next sessions, we are going to create a dashboard to present our leadership team. So with the help of this data, we are going to visualize and we are going to show our managers, our leadership team. This is what we have created. Okay. So be ready for the visualization that we are going to do in next video. I always say this and I'm saying it again. I'm assuming that you guys are with me, you guys are cleaning the data with me and you guys are ready till this part. So be ready till this part so we can visualize the data in the next part. Okay, next part is going to be super interesting because we are going to create the dashboard and we're going to make our dashboard look fancy. So yes, be ready for that part.